Hi there, everybody. Hopefully everybody's doing well today. I don't know why. Maybe I should wait until the light comes on instead of having that sudden light burst. But anyway, I'm not sure what's going on because it's not my light over here that's doing that. But anyway, forgiving that. Today I've got a short quote that is memorable, I hope, but hopes to get you to actually do something. As I said in my line, is to say, like, quote like Nike is just basically just do it. But anyway, the quote's from Faith Mariah, and it's really simple. It's clarity comes from execution. That's it. Clarity comes from execution, which in a sense just means just do it. But I have a couple of, obviously, as you probably figured out by now, I have a few other words to say about that. One of the first things I want to discuss, though, is I think, how do I say this, is that people will find a hard time just doing things. You're stuck in a motion in which you've got like, oh, I can't do this, or I've tried this before and it won't work out, or I don't want to do it, or some such thing like that. It's somewhat vaguely analogous to writing a paper and it's just a blank sheet of paper and it's like you don't know what to do for the first word. So I've got two things basically to say about that today. The first one, before I really get into the quote, is just to do something, because the problem is kind of like what we were discussing before with the neurons, in which I've hinted at for several months now, is that when you take a look at something and you say, okay, this is a white sheet of paper, I don't know what to do with it, I can't think of anything, I can't do it, and you give up and walk off. What do you think is going to happen the next time you come down and sit down and try and write something? You're going to look at that same blank sheet of paper and you're not going to get any idea. And your mind's already created this neural pathway that basically says, give up, you can't do this. And it's going to be harder and harder and harder to do. Okay? So the idea is that when you actually start to do something, regardless of whether it makes sense or not, regardless of whether it's anything you turn in or show anybody else, doing something will get you in the habit that the next time you sit down, you'll be more inclined to do it again. And sooner or later, you'll produce something that's going to be worthwhile, just because just trying it and things will come together. Your mind again starts working on things. You've got this idea and you pull this idea and you pull this idea and you pull this idea, and sooner or later it comes up. Some of you, shall we say, think well in the shower or when you're out running or something. I've heard people say something that you get your best ideas when you're taking out for a run, or some people say they love the shower gods because they can be there and they'll get this brilliant idea in the middle of the shower. You probably get really good ideas at some point in time. When you start doing these things, like sitting there at that blank sheet of paper and starting to just do things, even if those things don't work out at that moment, you're still putting the ideas into your head and it's still processing and rattling around up there with all those neurons are going through their neural pathways. And sooner or later, you'll be standing there in the shower, in the run, sitting out in the back porch, whatever it's going to be, and something's going to come to you. And you'll be able to get there and you'll be able to start writing and be able to do whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing or wanting to do in the first place. You're not going to get to that point if all you do is look at something and say, I can't do this, and quit, because you don't have any of those neurons that are running around trying to, in a sense, solve problems for you. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Now, the clarity comes from execution. Doing it, let's just take, for example, a math problem. And I realize that this is not going to happen with everybody, but let me just use this as an example. So you're taking a look at this math problem and it's like, I don't know what to do with this. Okay, so let's go back. Where do you know what to do with? Is it the very first line? Can you take the first numbers? Do you not understand it at all? Then go back and look at the practice problems. If those don't make sense, get a couple of words and go online and Google something. There's going to be lots of things that you can go online. Show me how to do a quadratic equation. There's going to be a ton of YouTube videos somewhere along the line that are going to show you how to do this. Find an example and start working at those piece by piece. The more you work at it, execution, you get the clarity comes with actually doing something. Okay, it's not going to come and just sitting there looking at it and saying, okay, that's nice, what's this supposed to mean? You've actually start, if you will, to put pen to paper, to doing something, again, to get those neurons to process. In a sense, what I just said a minute or two ago, you've got to get them rattling around in your head for them to make connections that suddenly you get that aha. If you just sit there and don't do anything, you're never going to get that aha. Okay? If you're staring at a blank sheet of paper and can't figure out what to write, start writing. This is, I almost want to say infamous for a line for when people tell people about writing. If you want to be a writer and you can't write, people say, just start writing. If you've got a paper to write for a class or you've got a paper to write for work and you know, a report you have to give and you're looking at that blank paper or the blank screen or whatever it happens to be, and you just What do? Just start writing. It's going to be gobbledygook. It might be sort of like akin to having 1,000 monkeys playing with typewriters, but sooner or later, you're going to start producing something and your head's going to kick in and you'll start coming up with something and you'll be able to take that from there. You might trash everything you've written, but there might be a few gems of ideas that you'll be able to go in there and take them out and give you the basis of something else that you can work with. You're not going to be able to get anything if you don't at least start. So that's where the clarity comes from execution. You've got to begin to get in there and do something. How many of you have ever tried to do something, whatever it may be, maybe fix a recipe for the first time or put a piece of equipment together, or, you got IKEA furniture and it's like you're looking at this saying, now what am I supposed to do? You've got to, in a sense, know what you're supposed to be doing, what the end result is. Are you fixing a table? Are you doing a chair? Because if you don't know what the end result is, you're never going to figure it out. I mean, if you think you're doing a table, but really you've got the equipment for a chair, you're obviously not going to get anywhere, right? So that you start putting things together and doing things, and sooner or later, don't you get that little aha moment in which suddenly things work out? Now, it might take 5 minutes, it might take a week, it might take 2 months, but I'd be willing to bet that most of you have had that experience in which you're working on something and sooner or later you get that aha moment and suddenly it clicks. But if you don't ever start, that aha moment will never get there because you haven't started. So that when you do the execution, when you start getting something going, that's when you're going to start actually beginning to see what happens. One word will follow the next, one number will follow the next, one pattern will follow the next. If you put two pieces of wood together, sooner or later, you've got to figure out where to put the screw or the clamp or whatever. If you're trying something, I mean, if you think about it, if you've ever watched little children, whether you've got children or not, if you've ever watched little children or know about children or think about children and how they figure things out, they have to do it bit by bit. I remember watching one of my nieces learn to walk. She was about 9 months old at the time when I was watching her, and she would get up and she would hold herself onto a table and she would be thinking and she would be doing something, and then she'd try moving her foot here and then she'd try moving her hand there and letting go of the table, and she'd fall and then she'd get up and she'd try doing something else. She was doing things to figure out what was going to work and what didn't work. That's the only way we know how to grow and develop, because we all grew up that way. What do you think when you learned to speak? You just started talking. Sooner or later, something made sense. Now, funny thing on the side, that's how people learn to talk their particular language. If you've ever watched a newborn baby, well, not a newborn baby, a young infant with the parents, and the baby is just rattling off and stuff, and suddenly it says something that sounds like mama or dada. They may not be saying those words, but the parent interprets it that way. They go all sorts of bananas over that. They said mama. They said daddy. And the kid's thinking, oh, I did something cool. And they're going to repeat it because they want to see their parents go crazy. Because otherwise the kid doesn't know what's going on. They just made a bunch of sounds. So they start doing these things. They get the response back. They say, oh, that was successful. And they repeat it again. And sooner or later, a kid learns to talk. Think about it. You don't just sit there and watch a baby start babbling everything and suddenly come up with, the Gettysburg Address or something. They get that feedback from others that said you did a good job. So you may not get the feedback from others, but you get the feedback from yourself by seeing that you're getting something accomplished, and you're seeing that when you sit down and you do this, you actually get further along when you actually do it. Okay? This is sort of a ramble, but I hope you followed where I was coming from with this. Again, you get clarity with execution. If you want to do something, if you want to accomplish it, you got to get started. I hope this was helpful. I hope this gave you something to think about. And again, if you think that you're somebody that might need to listen to it, please share it with me and let me know. And do share and tell me whether or not you thought that was helpful. I really would appreciate if you let me know what you think about it. So you have a good week. I hope everything's working well. And again, please hit reply and let me know what you think about it. I would really appreciate that. So take care, have a good day, and we'll chat with you later.